Hello. Welcome to our next chapter, that is your importation, exportation, and transportation of goods. Now, for an exam point of view, this is not a very important chapter. So, if you want, just listen to this chapter while you're traveling, and you will be done with this chapter. Okay. So, first of all, is that all the vessel aircraft. So, whenever a vessel or aircraft comes into India, it can land in India only at a customs port or an airport. That means only some specified ports which have been termed as your custom ports. Only there they will be allowed, except in case of emergency. Next, report arrival to the nearest customer officer. So whenever you arrive, you will have to report your arrival to a custom officer, and you will not allow unloading of goods, passengers, unless all safety procedures have been done. Next, submit passenger and import manifest. Now, what is an import passenger and import manifest? It means it is an information about passengers and goods in the vessel. That means whatever passengers, whatever goods are in the vessel, it is a document containing all of that information. So you have to submit that to the PO if goods are brought by. Okay. So if the goods are brought by your ship or aircraft, so if your goods are brought by ship or aircraft, then this has to be electronic. It has to be filed electronically anytime prior to your arrival. Anytime prior to arrival, it has to be filed. However, that means if you are coming by sea or air, it is electronic filing. But if you are coming by land, that means by your moving vehicle, in such a case, it is manual filing within 12 hours after arrival. So after you arrive, you have a maximum period of 12 hours within which you have to submit this information, this manifest. Okay. Unloading of goods only allowed when your PO grants entry inward. That is for vessels only, and only when you get your entry inward will you be allowed to unload your goods. Your entry inward given as acknowledgement that the customs department is ready to supervise the unloading of cargo, because you have to pay custom duty on that. So there should be someone present that, boss, everything that is being unloaded, you will be paying custom duty on this. Next, loading and unloading to be done under supervision of your PO only. So there has to be a proper officer. Next, goods not to be loaded or unloaded on Sundays or any other public holidays or post working hours unless you have paid a fee. So that means goods you are not allowed. You are not allowed to either load or unload on which days, that is your Saturdays, holidays, or even after working hours, unless you pay a prescribed fee. Okay. Now next is your clearance of imported goods. Now what happens is, once the goods have come into the Indian territory, that means they have physically come into the Indian territory. Now what do you have to do? You will have to clear them for home consumption. That means so that the people of India can use this. So once the imported goods enter the custom area, it is the responsibility of the custodian. It is the responsibility of the custodian what? To maintain records of goods received and send copy to your PO. So it has to maintain records of all the goods received, and it also send a copy to the proper officer. And second is, he will not permit removal of such goods, because you have to pay custom duty. You have to do clearance for home consumption. Only then will we allow you to remove these goods from here. Okay. So now what is a custodian? You will ask. So in case of ports, it is your port trust. In case it is an inland container depot, in such a case, your custodian is your CCI, that is your Container Corporation of India. If you are doing by air, then it is your airport authority, and if it is by rail, it is your station master. So this is your custodian. Custodian also to send report to custom authorities tallying goods landed by vessels, called the out turn statement. So they will also tally these figures that they get. If any goods are pilfered means stealing in small quantities. So if any goods are pilfered after unloading in the custom area, custodian will be liable to pay duty, because in case of pilferage, we have already discussed that is the importer will not be paying duty. So in such a case, someone will be paying duty. So therefore, the custodian will be liable, that, boss, after the goods have been unloaded, these goods are your responsibility. If they have been stolen, you are the person who's going to pay us custom duty. Okay. Importer to file your import BOE, that is 4 copies. 4 copies you have to do of bill of entry. So importer to file import bill of entry electronically for clearance of goods. Now there are your different white, yellow and green. You do not have to get deeper into it. Every color has its own meaning. Now what is the time limit? It is the end of day before the day on which vessel arrives at the customs station. So you have to file this end of the day before the day, end of the day before the day on which vessel arrives at customs station, maximum 30 days prior to approval. So what prior to arrival, so you have a period 30 days prior to approval till 1 day prior to approval, end of day before that day. Next is your provisional assessment of duty when importer is unable to self assess. So there will be provisional assessment. So if your importer is not able to self assess, or the PO deems necessary, in such a case there will be provisional assessment. Or if any chemical test is required, any necessary documents not produced, if produced but the PO deems necessary, that means your proper officer feels that we should do a provisional assessment. Provisional assessment allowed in both in cases of import and export. When duty finally assessed, any excess or deficiency, so whenever your duty has been finally assessed, so after your provisional assessment, whenever your duty is finally assessed, any excess or deficiency, because in case of provisional assessment, for example, we said that you owe us 1 lakh, and now when the duty has been finally assessed, if it comes to 80,000, that means I have paid 20,000 extra, correct? So there can be excess or deficiency. So when goods are cleared for home consumption or exportation, this excess or deficiency has to be paid. Or when warehouse goods, so it is bond or 2 times the excess duty, this is what, how it will be settled. Okay. Next is your custom audit. Now custom audit is carried out at the premises of the auditee or office of PO, and they will give a 15 days advance notice before doing a custom audit. Your auditee to preserve records for a period of 5 years. Now there are two types of these custom audit. One is your transaction based audit and second is your premise based audit. So transaction based audit, they will check a specific transaction, whereas in premise based audit, they will do a inspection, they will do a audit of your entire premises, your entire office, etc. The chief commissioner to examine 5% of quarterly audit reports. So of all the audit reports that are made, the chief commissioner will examine 5% of the quarterly audit reports. Now, time limit for payment. So, time limit for payment in case of self-assessment. So, time limit for payment of duty, it is date of presentation of bill of entry. That will be your time limit for payment. In case of assessment, reassessment or provisional assessment, it will be within 1 day from the date when bill of bill of entry has been returned by your proper officer. Okay, so this is date of presentation. Over here it is 1 day from date of BOE. Okay, in case of deferred payment, so some people are allowed to pay on defer basis. So on deferred payment, if BOE is returned between your 1st to 15th of the month, so if your bill of entry has been returned from the date either first, that is your first half of the month, so 1st to 15th, then time limit for payment for all of those bill of entries will be 16th of the same month. Okay, now if your bill of entry has been returned between 16th to last day of the month, 16th to last day of the month, it will be your first day of the next month. However, if the month is March, so from 16th to last day of March, so if it has been submitted, if it has been returned between 16th March to 31st March, in such a case, time limit for payment will become 31st March. Okay, so it will not become 1st April, it will be 31st March. Importer certified under your AEO program. Okay, so as I told you that there are some people who are allowed, to pay on defer basis. So it is these people. So importer certified under the AEO program, that is your tier 2 and tier 3, and authorized public undertaking may defer payment of import duty. Okay, so importer certified under your AEO program. If default in payment is greater than one, that is if you have made more than one default, so if default in payment greater than one in the last 3 months, your deferred payment will not be allowed. That means if more than once, if you have defaulted in such a case, deferred payment will not be allowed. Mandatory electronic payment of duty. Mandatory electronic. Okay, so it is mandatory for them. For whom? your AEO, these people who are allowed your deferred payment. And next is your custom duty. So if your custom duty is either more than or equal to rupees 10,000 per bill of entry. So if your custom duty is more than or equal to rupees 10,000 per bill of entry, you have to mandatory electronically pay this. Over the counter will not be allowed. Okay. Payment through your electronic cash ledger and electronic duty ledger. So money transferred in advance. So whenever you transfer, it will be credited and appropriated for each demand in your ECL. Okay. Remission of duty chargeable on any material used in manufacture of goods. Duty will be credited to your EDL, that is your electronic duty ledger. So remission means whenever your custom duty department, whenever they paid back to you, in such a case, this is your remission of duty. So how will they pay it back to you? They will credit it to your electronic duty ledger. Okay. Next is your disposal of goods not cleared. So if the goods have not been cleared for home consumption, if the goods have not been cleared for home consumption, and they are still in the custody of the custodian. So some days have been specified that they will get rid of these goods if they are not clearing it for home consumption. So if the goods are not cleared for home consumption or for warehouse, that means if they are still lying on the port and neither they have been warehoused in a custom, neither have they been warehoused in a custom warehouse, nor have they been cleared for home consumption. So there is a period of 30 days. However, if these goods are not cleared for home consumption or warehouse in 30 days, the custodian will be allowed to sell the goods by auction because nobody is coming to claim it, nobody is warehousing it, nobody is clearing for home consumption. That means these goods we will consider as abandoned. How many days? How many days? That is your 30 days. So after giving notice to the importer only, he will be allowed to auction these goods. However, if they are your sensitive goods, that means, for example, your food, your animal, things that might get spoiled or may die. So these can be sold before 30 days because after 30 days, there will be no value of this. Next, your bill of entry filed post auction. Your bill of entry will be filed post the auction and your PO to determine the duty within 15 days. So your bill of entry will be filed once the auction has been completed, once the goods have been gotten rid of, and the amount of duty will be determined by the PO within how many days? Within 15 days. Okay, next is your exportation. So export of goods loaded only when entry outward, that is for vessels only when entry outwards has been given, or shipping bill of export, let export order, port note. That means if your vessel is anchored away from the port are granted. So export goods will only be, your goods will be loaded, your export goods will be loaded only after these particular documents have been given. Departure and passenger crew departure manifest. Remember, we did a manifesto above also, so this is also the same. Okay, so this has to be delivered to the PO before departure. That means what all goods are on my ship and who are passengers, what all people are on my ship. Now your mode of conveyance. So if it is by sea, that means if it is by vessel. So if it is by sea, your receipt of goods boarded, it is called your made receipt. If it is by airway, that means if it is by air, it is called your air consignment note. And if it is by your train or lorry, that means if it is by land. So in such a case, it is your railway receipt or your lorry receipt. Okay. Exporter to submit shipping bill. Exporter to submit shipping bill. That means the person who is exporting it outside India, he has to submit a shipping bill in case it is being transported by your vessel or air. That means either by sea or by air. Or bill of export in case of vehicle. Okay. So in case of land, your bill of export has to be submitted, and in case of vessel or by flight, your shipping bill has to be submitted. Custom officer check goods are not prohibited once shipping bill has been filed and then let export order has been passed. So this let export order is passed by your custom officer. That means he is allowing that yes, I allow you to let export. I will allow you to let export. So only once the shipping bill has been filed, you call it the shipping bill, your bill of export, whatever, only once that has been filed, then your custom officer check that boss, whatever goods you are taking, this is okay, there is no harm in this, only then will he give you your let export order. Okay, so these items that I was telling you, let export order, all of this has been covered. Next is your postal article. Postal articles mean when you are sending goods abroad through post or through courier. In such a case, your rate of duty on imports, is the rate on date when list containing particulars of goods have been presented to your proper officer. So it is the rate on that date when this list has been presented to your PO. And in case of exports, it will be rate on date when your exporter deliver goods to the postal authority. So that is when the person who wants to export these goods, the day when he gives it to the postal authority, that will be the date of rate of duty. Okay. Now I have put a brief procedure of your import and export. So first of all, your goods arrive at your Indian customs station. This is import, that is when goods come into India. So of course, as we studied, it will come at an Indian custom station. Okay, so goods have arrived. Now what will happen? An import manifest or an import report that we already studied, this will be delivered by person in charge to your proper officer. That's that whoever is the person in charge of that particular vessel or ship, etc. Whatever, he will give it to the proper officer in charge, the import manifest. After this, the entry inwards will be granted by your PO. That means entry inwards to the vessel will be granted by the proper officer. Once entry inwards have been granted, unloading of goods at your custom port. So since these ship has been allowed to come inside, only then will we allow you to unload the goods at the port. Now, what you have to remember, this has to be under your supervision of proper officer. We've already studied. It will be at approved place and it will be at working day at working hours. As I told you, Sunday, public holidays, and after working hours, it is not allowed. Now, once these goods have been unloaded, what did I tell you? This is under custody of your custodian. The custodian is responsible for these goods. Electronic filing of bill of entry. This will be filed by the importer with your proper officer. So importer, that means the person who has imported it in India, this will be electronically filed. Now what happens once it has been imported? You will have three options. So either you can clear it for home consumption. Second is for transshipment. Transshipment means you got it into India and then again you are sending it outside India. That means you are not doing it for home consumption. India is just a stopping phase in the middle. And third is your for warehousing. That means you do not know what you want to do with the goods for now. So you will put it in a warehouse for now without paying duty. Once you clear it from the warehouse, you can clear it for home consumption. Okay. In such a case, first you have to pay your self-assessed duty. Okay, and in case of warehousing, once your BOE has been filed for home consumption, only then will we ask you to pay the duty. Once all of this duty has been paid, order for clearance for home consumption will be given. Okay, so this was your entire process for imports, and next is your brief procedure for export. So your exporter files the shipping bill of export electronically with the PO. If you remember, we had studied your shipping bill is for your vessel and air, and your bill of export is for any vehicle. So exporter will file it with the proper officer. In case the duty is payable, self-assessed and paid. So when the duty is payable, he has already self-assessed and paid. The let export order, who will grant? This will be granted by your PO. Let export order will be granted if satisfied that goods are not prohibited to export. This we had already studied above. Okay, so this is just in the chart format. Entry outward granted by your proper officer to vessel. So if you remember, during inward, while we were importing, your entry inward was granted, and now when you are exporting, your entry outward is granted by your PO. So entry outward granted by PO to the vessel, post which goods can be loaded, and this is only applicable to your vessels. Person in charge of the conveyance is your mode of transport. So person in charge of the conveyance delivers the export manifest. Okay, during import we studied import manifest. Over here it is your export manifest. So export manifest in case of vessel, aircraft, or export report in case of vehicles. This will be submitted. Proper officer grants written order post which the conveyance can actually leave. So even after granting the let export order, all of this process has to be followed, and only then will this conveyance be allowed to leave. And with this, we are done with this chapter. Our baggage rules I will be covering in the next video, and I'll see you there.